Welcome to How to Be a Media Critic, presented by your host, AichiYume. Let's see. Ooh, you guys, I forgot I animated it. Good job, me. A little introduction. I have been in media criticism for the last 10 plus years, starting with mostly blogging, writing, video creation, podcasting, and paneling. I have 2 whole podcasts, which means I'm twice as insufferable. I love that that's the thing that everyone can agree on. Remember the big podcast boom during the pandemic when everyone and their mom started a podcast? I was one of those people. So, I've been doing this for a while. I genuinely love it. It's a space that I feel so fortunate to be in, and especially when I feel like voices were the most necessary. Sit down, sit down. So let's start off with a question for you guys. What is a media critic?
Oh, actually, I don't know.
The voice of the people.
Okay. Very nostalgia critic. I love that. Anybody else want to take a shot at it? Yes.
I feel like anyone can be a media critic, right? In a sense, right? Like just come out of a movie on your thoughts.
Yeah. So media criticism and media critics are exactly as you would think. They are people that critique media. We're using some real hooked on phonics logic here. By media criticism and media critique, what we mean is being able to look at things from a critical standpoint. Now, pop quiz. Does criticism have to be bad? Thank you. That is one lesson that I'm so glad that we're relearning from the 2010s, CinemaSins, angry video game nerd, nostalgia critic era, is that to be a critic means you hate everything. I love anime. I love manga. I would not be here wearing a t-shirt that says I embody everything that is wrong with your fandom if I did not love this. I critique it because I love it. It doesn't mean that I have any, yes.
Even with the negative criticism, it can still come from a place of love rather than
Oh, it absolutely can. And by all means, does that, not mean that some of my critiques aren't negative? Absolutely. I have negative things to say about things that I love. But it isn't in either direction. Yes.
I think it's like really identifying the pros and cons of
Mhm.
something, and so you can be like, these are the good things about it, these are the things it could like move on, or
Mhm.
it kind of limits, but it's separated clearly, like this one's good,
Mhm.
bad.
No,
It's just about your own integrity. It's just about your own integrity.
I withhold comment on that. Some people have made it very funny. I think it was a stick, at least for me, that wore out really fast, especially when everyone started doing it. But for the most part, it's a stick for a reason, and it lasts. So the importance of media criticism is being able to look at things from an analytical lens. And you might be thinking, well, why is that necessary? You're probably not because you're in this panel and you want to be a media critic, which I love. Now, the key thing with defining the term media criticism also is you keep that word nice and broad. I have talked about things, I have dedicated an ungodly amount of words to 90s medical journals. I critique music, I critique video games, I critique whatever I'm watching, my hyperfixation shows, I critique anime and manga, I talk about anime and manga on my shows. But I'm allowed to talk about whatever I want. So if I go see Deadpool and Wolverine tonight, which, Carlos, that's subliminal. I want you to see that movie. I can talk about it. I have the freedom to talk about it. I'm not in a box oh, you're only an anime critic. Oh, you're only a movie critic. I get to be a well-rounded person. All of media is available and all of media is studied. So what did I do to get here? Started writing horrible fan fiction as a teenager, as we all did. Started writing just the most abysmal fan fiction as a teenager. Focused on writing in high school, got my double major in English and communication, started a blog, started a column for Fangirl Nation, started making videos, started podcasting, and I started paneling. Now, do you need to take all of those steps to get here? Absolutely not. There's a lot of discourse recently about media criticism and media literacy being both classist and ableist. And as someone who is very neurodivergent, I understand where that's coming from, but even though I went through all of these steps to get here, that does not mean that everyone necessarily needs to go through that path. If you are just really passionate about a thing and want to talk about it, I am absolutely here to empower you to do that. My English degree watches me every night while I sleep. It is sat next to a novena candle of St. Anthony Bourdain, and together they watch me sleep every night as a reminder that I should probably be writing. Why did I become a media critic? Well, as we mentioned, there was that big 2010s, 2000s boom of media critics, and one thing I will say is, especially watching that, and I was sentient enough to understand, I was seeing a lot of people and hearing a lot of voices that didn't look or sound like mine. Now, while those voices are still valid and important, you would start getting critiques that didn't hit as close to home. My favorite period at a time was people looking at the Black Panther movies purely as MCU movies. And they could not appreciate it in any other sense, not for the culture, not for the cause, not for the acting. It's like, well, that's a Marvel movie. This is really disappointing and boring. And it's like, okay, I see where you're going, but also maybe not. So as a queer person, as a Black person, as a biological female, I felt it was important to start adding my voices to this kind of stuff. There was no one that was going to do it for me. I couldn't sit around and wait, hoping that a magic unicorn would fall out of the sky and start writing the content I wanted to see. I had to do that for myself. And that's what I tell myself every day before I have to record early in the morning. I am creating the content that I wanted to see when I was young. That little amorphous blob of who I was when I was younger, looking up and not seeing Black representation as writers, Black representation as fans, that any of that was possible. That's why I chose to be a media critic. But enough about me. We're here to talk about you guys and your future. Here are a few important steps into your media criticism journey. Decide on your focus, and you may notice focus is in quotes, correct? As mentioned, I talk about whatever the heck I want. The amount of words I've dedicated to ER is insane, because I care about that show. The amount of words I've dedicated to the 2000s medical drama House, absolutely insane. Figure out what makes you happy and what you want to write about. If you are not super into comics, don't make yourself be a comics journalist. I see that all the time. It's like, oh, I'm going to become a YouTuber. To be famous, I must cover comics, but I hate them. Everyone's going to know. We can see it. We can see that oozing out of your pores when you don't want to talk about comics and you don't want to be here. Figure out your why. That's a little existential, I understand, but I gave y'all my why. I wanted to be the voice that I didn't see when I was growing up. And that's something that I don't take lightly. Figure out why you want to do this. If you're doing it because you think it's a quick way to make a lot of money, it isn't. But I'm not here for money. I'm here for this. I'm here to empower other people. I'm here to be one other voice. When for so many times, especially in nerd spaces, there was one voice that you could listen to, and they probably threw in language that is now deemed colorful. Do your research. That is one thing that I've noticed is very, very important. And even I get caught up in this sometimes, is doing your research beforehand, during the middle, and after. I will go in 100% ready to tear something apart, and then one Google will be like, oh, but it's satire, it's supposed to be like that. And it's like, delete paragraph. So, do your research. Understand the work in context. That's a big one. Understanding the work in the context of how it exists. No anime exists in a bubble. No manga exists in a bubble. No comic book exists in a bubble. They all have context. Now, that sounds really, really daunting. But if you take your time, it gets a lot easier over time, I promise you. Find a platform and a format that work for you. Now, this took me some time. I didn't think I liked being in front of the camera. Turns out I do. It's called being an only child. I like the attention. But video might not be the format for you. You might not like it. That's fine. Audio is perfectly good. Podcasts are a completely diverse platform that I never thought would be as interesting as they are. You can have long form, short form. You can be as niche as you want. One of my shows is specifically on boys, love, and yaoi. And I never thought I would be able to have a yaoi podcast. And now I do. And I get to talk about questionable fictional men regularly.
Yay!
Which one?
Which podcast?
Would be out.
Oh, for the questionable men? Sorry. The podcast is the Yaoi Shelf. The questionable men are, at this moment, it's been a lot of Subway Bros from Pokemon. Just say, train wreck is a hell of a ship. Well, find a platform and format that works for you. And that means experimentation. And I know experimentation can be dangerous and scary. But you can't be afraid to fail. If you upload a video, you get one view, and it's the one factory view that every YouTuber gets so you don't get depressed. It's okay. There are so many tools that are available out there now to get better at SEO, to make better thumbnails. This lovely presentation is made in Canva, which owns my soul and is not yet a sponsor. But there are so many tools that are available out there to be able to up your game for any format necessary. Whether you start your own blog, whether you start a podcast, whether you start a YouTube channel, there's so much that's available. And that's just amazing to me. I didn't think that I would like video as much as I do, but I do. Turns out I do. Especially if I have a lot to say for a long time. What didn't work for me was trying to do several short videos and make that work. I am much better if you give me a topic and let me talk for, at minimum, an hour. And then there's the compelling content. Become an expert. Now, we have all read reviews about shows, about games, about movies, written by someone who has clearly never been in the same room as the media property that they are reviewing. We have all been there, where you can look at the first sentence and tell this person has not even sat next to a copy of this movie. Becoming an expert is so important, and it can be tedious. Before I review most things, or before I talk about them or form an idea of what I want to talk about, I've rewatched them several times. The amount of times I've gone over before writing a post on Quentin Tarantino's revisionist history, I rewatched his whole filmography multiple times over. Now, did I have to do that? Probably not. I also just really like Quentin Tarantino. But I felt so much more confident in myself and what I was saying when I felt like I was an expert in that. When I had digested enough of Quentin Tarantino's essence through his movies, I felt confident enough to go to my blog and type all that stuff up. Any questions so far? Yes?
What's your favorite Quentin Tarantino movie?
Ooh, Kill Bill Volume 1, because I refuse to acknowledge that Volume 1 and 2 are one movie. A close second is probably Django Unchained. Any other questions while we're in the middle of it a little bit? Yes. Oh, I thought I saw a hand up. All right. We're gonna go off script a little bit. You ready for that? Why do you think media criticism is important? Why do you think media criticism is important? Yes.
I think it's really organizing. It can, like, if you're something older, it can maybe someone's writing a work about it and make it through the market or seeing a good article about it.
That's a good answer.
History is written by the journalists.
Correct. Yes.
Whatever is written about the media is also like a reflection of what culture,
Mhm.
period, characters, or what's acceptable to audiences at the time,
Mhm.
what's aged well.
Correct.
It's hard to find a space where generally anything is not equal feedback. So having meaningful or constructive feedback not only helps to find a space, but also helps to know where they can improve and where they can change.
Correct. Those are all great answers. Give yourselves a pat on the back unless you're like me and your arms are too short to reach. Media criticism is important because all media is trying to tell or sell you something. Your manga is trying to tell and sell you something. Your video games are trying to tell and sell you something. Even mindless entertainment is pushing an agenda. This is not conspiracy, this is advertising. A field that I have been in for 10 years. Everything you look at is trying to make a point. And it gets so much more interesting when you realize the point it's trying to make. So one of my aha moments was I got really, really bored of the MCU fast. And I love Marvel Comics. And I couldn't figure out why. It took me a minute, but I watched a video essay about how superheroes have to maintain the status quo. Your superhero is not going to fly in through the door, demand that everyone receives a living wage, abolish homelessness, or anything like that. Especially the way American superheroes are written is to sell a certain aesthetic. And that aesthetic is the status quo. That completely turned my life upside down because I couldn't figure out why Captain America in live action, despite his wonderful butt, was so boring to me. Why he felt so one-dimensional. Because under Disney, they're pushing a status quo. And that's important to keep in mind. I remember when I first started doing media crit, this was a comment I got a lot. It was, well, why can't you just enjoy things? Why can't you just exactly. Why can't you just turn your brain off? And it's like, well, that sounds like the definition of death. So I will not be turning off my brain at all. Also, I take a lot of medication for my brain to slow down to the level that it is. I fear any slower, I become a sentient tree. I do this out of love, and I think that's something that I'm so glad to be seeing coming back in the media crit space. Is if I tear something to shreds, I promise you I love it deeply. You don't spend the energy you spend doing a 2-hour-long podcast episode on gravitation without loving it. Yes?
Not maybe, not maybe.
Oh.
Yes. Gravitation.
We did a gravitation episode. It was one of the first ones that we did. You do not spend hundreds of hours in Pokemon without loving it. I love what I write about. And even if I don't particularly like the one thing that I saw, I still know how hard it was for it to be made, how much effort those writers went through, how much effort those animators went through, the CEOs and the execs, but I know that everything is a labor of love. So even if I don't always have the nicest things to say about it, the work doesn't stop existing in the framework of it being important to someone. You guys ready to talk about some tough stuff? Now, in your burgeoning journey into media criticism, you may encounter a few things that are less than ideal. The amount of racism and misogynoir I have endured is too damn high. And over nothing, I made a post about AichiYume once on Fangirl Nation, and because my avatar is also black, it immediately became an issue of race. The amount of times I've been told that I'm not a real anime fan, that I am in an elaborate long con to gain male attention. Because I do this for male attention. Yes. Racism is a thing. It is more virulent online. Protect yourselves. I'm very, very blessed that social media is my day job. I build hella good fences. But after a while, it gets to you, and that's okay. Take some time away, understand that especially with the anonymity of the internet, people feel like they can say whatever they want, and then you just let them be wrong. Sexism. Oh boy, the amount of times I've heard that my opinion is invalid because go make a sandwich. Just here talking about Yu-Gi-Oh, but okay.
Probably shower too much.
I do. I smell real good, that's the problem. I smell like cherry blossoms. I'm a real 3D woman. It's very scary. They don't know what to do. They don't know, and they just revert back to their most base form. Like, say a slur.
It's like a 50% chance of
But over nothing. That's the thing that has always bothered me, is there is an amount of misogyny that I've always understood exists in the world, but over nothing. So, to those of us femme presenting and ladies especially, do not let the hostility of this space scare you. Those of us that are in it are fiercely protective of each other. We will defend you. For the men in the space, protect each other and everyone, because that sexism goes both ways. I have seen female readers leave not nice comments on male presenting and male writers. It's a two-way street. We all have to protect each other. Sound fair? Homophobia and transphobia. Now, I mentioned at the top of the show that I'm queer. I wrote about my queer experience a few times. You want to guess how that went over? For the most part, over on my blog, not too bad, because my blog followers know and understand. But I've been in other spaces where that conversation has gone much differently. The thing is that, especially the perspective of queer people, is so important in so many media spaces. It's vital to start having these conversations. We need to start having these conversations as rights continue to become something that we are concerned about losing. It is more important to be visible, open, and educated. Now, here's just straight up trolling. That still exists on the internet. I honestly thought people would get tired of it by now. It's been 30 years. It's been 30 years. Touch grass.
For new people.
Oh, right, there are new people that exist. I thought we just recycled all the same people like a Brita filter.
It's the new 13-year-old.
Ah! Yeah, I've seen, frankly, too many of them this convention. But the trolls exist that are just there to tear you down because they can, because they have spare time and they can. Don't let them. Rude comments and unconstructive criticism. Now, please note, nowhere in there do I leave space for valid critique. If I'm wrong, if I'm out of pocket, if I have said something crazy, please tell me. I love to hear it. Now, what isn't necessary is calling into question my looks, my weight, the color of my skin, who I choose to go to bed with. None of those are present or of necessary merit in discussing whatever I'm discussing. I've gotten comments that are unnecessarily personal, including one where someone said that my parents, who have passed on, would be disappointed in me. This was on a blog post. You will get some crazy comments sometimes. And I won't say that in the moment, you just let it go. Because I didn't. It took me literally, I think, a year to process all of those comments that I got. Because I, unfortunately, got mini canceled all at one time. But the rude comments are going to be there, and the best thing that you can do is be firm with yourself. I've also found, here's an insider trick, kindness is very disarming. Meet them where they stand. It's like, I think you're a dumb insert word. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate you giving me the time and energy to listen to what I have to say. Thank you. You know, just go full customer service voice. I appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Yes, my customer service voice does sound like a haunted doll. Why should you be a media critic? We talked about this a little bit at the top, but I found this quote from Sterling K. Brown to be very, very important. Empathy begins with understanding life from another person's perspective. Nobody has an objective experience of reality. It is all through our individual prisms. This is what I do, I don't need my voice to be the loudest. I don't need my voice to be the most listened to. I just think it's important that my voice is heard. And I appreciate the audience I have. I appreciate the people that read my blog. I appreciate the people that listen to my shows. I do another show on literature, and listening to people talk about their English classes, like, oh, we read this forever ago. It's so cool to hear you talk about it. Am I the most famous podcaster? Absolutely not. I'd not be at AichiYume if I was. But the fact that I can add my voice to the prism of life, to the experiences of others, because then you can read something and be like, oh, I never thought of this show that way. I never thought of this anime from this lens. I never thought of this video game from this lens. I did a really, really fun post a while ago about NPC gaze in Animal Crossing, because I was a late adopter to Animal Crossing, and I didn't know that all of your villagers track you with their eyes like predators. So I felt performative angst being watched by little zebras. It's like, this is too much pressure for me. And I wrote about it. But that's something that, while it's not going to cure the ails of society, if one other person can be like, I didn't think about it that way. I was too busy harassing one of my villagers with nets, which he told me to do, and I didn't know there were negative consequences to that, and I started crying because I made my horse cry. But that's why you should do media credit. Your voice matters. It doesn't matter the size of your audience. It doesn't matter how many followers you have. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you are adding to the chorus of life. Any questions? So we'll do an open Q&A for a little bit. But then those are all the places that you can find me if you scan the old QR code. But do you have any questions for me, my process, about Media Crit, anything? Yes?
How do you approach criticizing criticism?
I think with radical empathy. Try to understand why this person felt the need to be negative, or at least negative to the extent that they were. I find that that's one of the best ways to approach it, because there's usually a reason. People have off days. The amount of angry movie reviews I've written just because I've had a bad day, like, I hate this movie and it's trash and the actor's not any. It's like, no, you had a bad day, your coffee was decaf instead of regular. Come back and try again. And meet that person where they are and be human.
You said you worked in advertising, correct?
Correct.
That's pretty like deliberate form of media in general.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say that's affected the way you interpret everything in this advertising?
It has changed everything. Everything looks like a giant ad because it is. It's honestly, it is one of the most dystopian things to work in. Because I know all the tricks to make people buy things, and then when they work on me, I feel like a dumb doll. Yes. Like, I feel like a dumb child where it's like, I just used my own magic against me. Now I have 3 boxes of Pop-Tarts.
To take that a step further, a lot of artists, particularly in stuff like music in particular, they'll be interviewed about stuff like that and they'll say, oh, well, that wasn't intentional, I didn't think of that. They'll say, oh, I didn't think of any of this, it just happened. Through that lens, how do you interpret that? Do you think that's usually the case? Do you think it's sometimes dishonesty?
I don't think it's dishonesty. I think sometimes it's lack of intentional thought. So I remember I saw this with the creator of Neon Genesis Evangelion, where he's like, oh, the designs were just super cool. Like, you don't super cool your way to a Kabbalic tree of life, sir. This is not an Ed Hardy design. You do not, this looks cool your way into an ancient Jewish reference of the tree of life. That is something you had to see in an open book once. So I don't think that it's dishonest. I think sometimes it's masking. I know, at least, especially for me, I found there was a lot of friction being in especially a lot of male white spaces, being a more intelligent black woman. So if someone asked me, oh, what was that reference to? Oh, it's nothing. You just shirk back to avoid almost showing your face card. Like, actually, I kind of am smart and I read multiple books. Or also, I think in music it's interesting because it's like, yeah, you don't, unless you're written by AI, which increasingly that is true. This is coming from somewhere. Even if it's a rich man's pocket, there's a point. So, dishonesty doesn't feel like the right word for it. Just, I feel like they're almost withholding. They're shielding it. Because yeah, like that Evangelion quote always gets me like, I just thought it looked really neat. Okay. Sure, Dan. Anyone else? Yes?
What's your approach to identifying agenda or propaganda in a new franchise or new series?
Can you repeat that for me? Sorry.
What is your approach to identifying propaganda or agenda in a
Ooh. I think understanding what I'm trying to talk about first, because one thing I'll notice is I'll have like a gut reaction and like, this feels off, and I won't have a word for it just yet. So then I'll go back, I have too many bookshelves in my apartment, and I'll go back for some of my resource material and some of my research material, and then like, okay, that's the word I'm looking for, and then run with it. But I'd like to give myself time to sit and digest this a little bit, because especially using terminology like that, it can feel really loaded, and people sometimes react poorly. But loaded doesn't mean false. Oftentimes, media is trying to push an agenda. So, it's important to know what that agenda is and why it's important. That goes back to that research concern. My favorite part of watching like X-Men '97 were all the people that were disappointed that the X-Men were obvious queer allegories. And it's like, well, yeah, if you've read the X-Men before, you would know that. I'm shocked that you're disappointed. But center yourself first. Figure out exactly what you want to say and how you want to say it, and then proceed. Remember, loaded does not mean incorrect. If I'm using terms like fascist, like agenda, like propaganda, I am not throwing them out because I have extra dollars available in Scrabble. I'm throwing them out because I mean it. Next. Really nothing, an entire media crypt panel. No questions. Yes?
Like, is that ever a concern for you, or do you not mind seeing someone's opinion before you say something?
Do you guys want to hear the story of how I got canceled? So a few years ago over on my blog, I wrote a blog post about a woman in England who owns too many guinea pigs. I am not making this up. And I said in the post, I have some concerns about the care of 60 plus guinea pigs. And for a woman who says that there is always drama, drama's a two-way street, you also are feeding into it clearly if there is so much drama in your guinea pig live streams. That woman posted my blog post to her tens of thousands of fans, and all of them proceeded to drag me for literally years. I have been called outside of my name. I have had, so remember the dead parent comment? I received that, all from telling a woman that she has too many guinea pigs. To your point, I am usually pretty careful about that. But I'm also not like, hey Russo brothers, I wrote a post about how much I hate a stupid movie. Like, most people are pretty chill about it. Like, they are producers or directors, they're artists. They understand that not everyone is going to have flowery, glorious things to say. Now, getting canceled absolutely made me a little bit more aware of it, because I, crap you not, that cancellation saga ended maybe this year. This has been going on for years of people calling me outside of my name because I told a woman on the internet, not even adding her, that I have concerns about her 60 guinea pigs. And that's the story of how I got canceled by guinea pig stands. I made merch. I did! If you go to my Redbubble, I made merch of all the mean comments I received. And I've sold that merch. But yeah, just as long as you're not like out and tagging people, and the thing about media criticism is nuance. So again, like I am very rarely writing, this sucks, I hate this, I wish the director was never born. It's, hey, I liked this thing, there are a couple of things that I wish were a little different. Overall, good movie, good show, go see it. They're not gonna, rational people aren't gonna come at you for that. Yes? No. This is for me and my Dragon Board. I didn't write over 1,000 words talking about the use of pop music in ER for the creator, well, I mean, he's dead, but for the director or actor of ERs to find it.
Would you want them to?
Yes. I think there are some that I would love for them to see, or at least like be aware of, but I would never want to be like doing this panel and like someone comes up to me, it's like, I heard what you said about Monica. I have a few questions for you. So I think that's the other big thing is, for the most part, I write for me. And if other people happen to find it interesting, yay! But I write about niche, weird things because that's what I want to write about. That's what I'm interested in. I want to talk an ungodly amount about 90s medical dramas. because that's what I grew up with and that's what's nostalgic for me. I want to talk a lot about the MCU because I've been a Marvel fan forever. I want to talk about DC Comics sometimes because I feel like it. So no, it's very rarely with the intention of being found. But if it is, I hope that whoever's reading it has the proper context. And please don't send your thousands of fans after me again. Yes.
I don't know if that's properly, but how do you go about when it's something you made a way that something is represented but done wrong in
Representation is such a tricky thing because there is no one true thing that is representative. I think I always try to approach it that way. Is that I might personally have an issue with what's being represented and what's being said, but I am not the entire audience. So I can say that, and I qualify heavily. I personally didn't care for this. I personally didn't like this. This was something that did not hit me very well. One thing over on my blog that I'm very, very used to talking about is like my trauma and my background. So when I talk about a movie like Wakanda Forever and how deeply that movie hit me, I understand how much of that is me, my experience, and my unique walk of life. And it doesn't invalidate that for literally anyone else. Just because I felt like that movie was speaking to me on a molecular level doesn't mean that anyone who didn't feel that way is wrong. You guys have been a lovely audience. I appreciate it. Yes.
Do you recommend watching Wakanda Forever? I still haven't. I would watch a lot of the new Marvel.
Then I would say no. It's a little bit more cerebral. There's definitely a lot that is being said. I think for a segment of the fan base, it was like, brain cell to brain cell communication. And then for a wider segment of the fan base, it just wasn't. So if you go on like Black Anime Twitter, which is a very fun place to watch every once in a while, the conversations you'll get about Wakanda Forever are completely different than like your Mr. Sunday Movies critique of Wakanda Forever. Not that his experience isn't valid, not that his thoughts on the movie aren't valid. I love Mr. Sunday Movies. It's just different. So I would say no, but if you have a friend who really wants to see it, seeing it with someone else who's super excited about it helps build that energy. Final questions, guys.
What do you think about forms of art that are antagonistic on, say, like the films of Darren Aronofsky? And what do you think your role is as a critic and someone who people look to for opinions and stuff in terms of maybe telling them to watch something that you know they won't enjoy and that maybe you didn't enjoy deliberately?
So over on my Boys Love podcast, we just talked about a little work called Jano Subete. If you're a fan of a certain age, that triggered you. Good, you're free. Don't go. It is important to consume media that is difficult. I'm the first person to say it. But being a part of that generation, that English class was a torture chamber where you are bludgeoned with books that make you uncomfortable. I also fully advocate for taking your time, for minding the tags, for understanding if something bothers you. Now, I don't think trauma is a hall pass. I watch things that make me uncomfortable all the time. I have two very dead parents. Most movies trigger me in some way. But that doesn't make them any less important. So mind your tags, be aware. If something is really viscerally bothering you, take a break, take some time. You might not come back to it, and then in your post or in your video, cop to that. Admit it. Say, hey, listen, this was too much for me. And no one's going to be mad at you. And if they are, those people are wrong. Yes?
How would you handle criticism of media, like someone being misinformed, or someone being bigoted, or someone being like more active? Like, how do you try and turn
I tend not to engage with insane lyricists at all. So I don't go there. People that make bigoted assumptions, I'm gonna be very honest, it depends on how I'm feeling. Some days I have the spoons to engage and to be a crusader and to take the charge, and some days, hide comment. I have more days than not where I feel like saying something and trying to meet them where they are and trying to be empathetic and understanding. But trust me, I have those low spoon days where it's like, blah, 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 Asian fetishism. Okay, I don't have time for this tonight. Anything else?
Have there ever been times you felt prisoner to your own audience?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Have there ever been times you have felt prisoner to your own audience?
Ooh, yes. So I mentioned getting canceled. I actually just ended my hiatus on my blog. And I felt so bad every single day that I wasn't posting. I felt awful. And I'm not even famous. I felt terrible. I absolutely do. For my Boys Love podcast, we usually do a live stream on Sundays. And I won't be able to do that because I might be doing another panel here. I felt like I was telling my children their puppy died. I absolutely do. But the cool thing about audience building is that you foster the community you want. So were my listeners concerned that I can't make a live stream because I'm literally doing the thing I love so much? No, not a single one of them. In fact, they've encouraged me. They're happy I'm taking time off. So that feeling prisoner is all up here. And I see a therapist 4 times a month for it. But yeah, I absolutely do. The minute I started posting, I felt beholden. And it wasn't until I started taking my schedule back. One big thing that helped me with that was getting back into writing and publishing fan fiction. Because some of you may remember the old fanfic gods were capricious and random. And if you were lucky, they would fart out another chapter every 3 years and you hope they didn't actually die. Reclaiming that energy of I am a random and capricious god and you will be happy if I sprinkle down some niche information for you was really beneficial to getting me to stop feeling like I'm totally a prisoner to my audience. Now I am grateful for my audience every single day. I am grateful for all of you. But I also know that if I'm not at my best, I can't give you guys my best. Yes.
This is a question in terms of when you got to talk about not using personal trauma to people, I was actually watching a video on that last night about, I don't know if you remember this week's video that went viral about that, I loved her.
Yes.
But it particularly reminded me of that detail where even when everything was baseless, everything else was baseless, the mother of the kidnapped girl made a learn when she actually made public statements and she tried to sue the user creators of that video and basically using that trauma to a lot of people were like, you need to listen to her, like, she's a greedy mother, her daughter's gone, and okay, well, not only is she, like, exploiting, she's giving other innocent people suffer, but also, she's also, she's sabotaging any efforts of finding her daughter.
I think, I always say don't use trauma as a holocaust just because there's so much art that I think is worth seeing that is deeply traumatizing. Now, there's some pieces that I don't think are worth it at all, and that in hindsight, I regret seeing this and my tears were wasted.
I guess if I were to come up with a question, a lot of times I people remember trauma, they do get, criticized, rightfully so, but in this case, it's a greedy mother, that we're also people are kind of treating her as a punch.
Yes.
Do you sometimes, do you find that that's become like much more common where it seems like, yes, criticism has grown, like become more diverse, but there's still in some in people's heads kind of like an area that you know, you haven't touched and you do like, no, you're not going to get picked for it.
Oh yes, I definitely see that happening, especially in a lot of the short form discourse spaces. I see that a lot on TikTok. I see that a lot on Twitter, where people just physically don't have the space to further explain themselves or give context, and they won't. One of the reasons why I always talk about my trauma very openly when I'm writing is because it's important for the reader to know if something really bothered me, there's probably a reason that has nothing to do with the director. So me and my friends, we have the Dead Dad Club because when we have dead parents, you attract people that also have dead parents. Spoilers for the movie Endgame, a very father-like figure dies. We all warned each other, like the lanterns in Mulan, saying, hey, just a heads up, this is probably gonna make you cry a lot in a theater full of people. We didn't say don't go see the movie. We didn't say boycott the movie. We didn't say we hated the movie. We just said, hey, heads up, if this is a particular thing that makes you very upset, you're gonna see a lot of it, just a warning. And that's what I find is most appreciated. Like, I will give trigger warnings in my reviews if there's trigger warnings for non-con, dub-con, for harassment, assault. I will always give those trigger warnings, even for violence. Because even if that's not necessary for me, it might be for someone else. At this stage, it's just courtesy. Final questions? Yes. Ooh, I don't, but if you visit my blog, which is in the links, you can hear a lot about what I enjoy. If you follow me on Twitter, you get to see a lot of unfettered conversations right now about House of the Dragon. Because I'm fascinated by that show. But I've thought about it. I've considered it. One more. Yes.
Which of your podcasts would
Ooh.
you just give a spiel about all of them?
So my one literature show is called Unfortunately Required Reading. Me and a friend who are both English majors look at the books that you had to read when you were in school. I think that one has the most broad appeal. If you particularly like boys loving yaoi, my other show is called The Yaoi Shelf, where we talk about boys love, anime, yaoi. We talk about queer depictions in media, and we have some really, really shockingly nuanced conversations about some incredibly strange fictional men. So I would say, depending on the flavor of what you like, I think there's something for everyone. Both of those shows I'm a co-host on, so I'm a little bit less insufferable. Did you have your hand up? No?
My question is a real question about the boys' club.
Ask me.
Boku no Pico.
No! I will throw the corn at you. Absolutely not. We will not go back there. We deserve better, and us Fujin have been fighting for rights for years. You guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for making my last AnimeFest something that is so special and so memorable. You are welcome to ask me questions as I'm breaking down, but thank you all for being here. I appreciate you so much. Bye!